Why, hello again. We're back for the second time today. Think of this as a part two on the subject of day signature 63.
Mm-hmm.
This is a special exception for us to come back to the same signature on the same day like this. An unprecedented moment, hopefully one we won't have to repeat, but what we'd like to do is share just a very human moment, I think, with you. And, those of you who have, excuse me, I'm bonking things around over here. Those of you who have already watched the first take, part one, on the day signature 63, you probably picked up on like my growing sense of dis-ease. It was like the more words we used, the further we were getting from the point that I was sensing. Now, Laura is more gracious and forgiving when it comes to something like this than I am. I think you would have been fine just letting it slide till whenever the 63 came up again. But what became clear to me is that there was an awful lot about the 41st angel in particular that, frankly, we did not understand. A lot of the clarity that we did have, all of it, I would say, at the time, was directly connected to the 63rd angel of truth. But that 41st angel of Inception remained, and to a great extent even now remains, a total mystery. The fact of the matter is, we're not going to know everything there is to know about these angels, ever.
Right.
We're not going to know what we're called to know, in many cases, until we meet with them in a session. And we've only had 10 sessions so far, which means that out of the 64 angels that we get to learn about, we've only scratched the surface. And the 41st angel is not one of those. So we were attempting to weave its story into something that we could understand. And frankly, it did not work. I did not feel that it was working even as it was happening. And I was really hoping it would work and really trying hard to make it work. And it didn't. I personally left that conversation feeling like we did certainly the 41st angel a disservice by working so hard to try and make it work. And that's the very thing that we're always being reminded not to do. So the minute that became clear, maybe not the minute, it actually took a few hours for me to finally calm down enough around it and realize what had happened. But once I could see what had happened, I wanted to return again to you in this manner. We don't need to spend too much time here, but the opportunity that I sensed was an opportunity to open a window into the process that we're engaged in, the real life process that we're engaged in. The fact is, we're learning right alongside you. The trap will be for us to show up as experts. That's going to be the trick. If we think we're responsible for being the experts on the 64 angels, and we show up to these conversations in that way, we will... It's not true. We will be dishonest if we attempt that. And if you arrive at these conversations expecting us to be the experts, you will be disappointed. We don't want to be experts. I want to be a Timothy. Laura wants to be a Laura. And we want to share this adventure of learning and discovery with you. So the first thing that I personally wanted to say was, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to try hard to make anything work when it comes to these angels. It's disrespectful to them, and it's dishonoring of the trust that you've placed in us to share with you what we can see, what we do know. In those cases where we don't yet understand something, in those cases where we don't know something, my commitment is to simply say, God, I don't know yet. Like, I just don't know yet. Mm-hmm. We will know eventually when the time is right, maybe when we meet with the angel. But right now, this 41st angel of Inception, walking the pathway of anticipation to become the embodiment of the supernova, is only something I can barely even sense. It's certainly not something I can explain. So that's the first piece. Do you have anything to add to that?
Just that our intention is to share the connections that we see. And of course, they're always going to be evolving. And I think that, you can give yourself a break, because I think that we have made it clear in the past that these are contemplations and we're learning right along with you guys and all of that sort of thing. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Now, this awareness, coming to this awareness for ourselves, which is just, it's basic self-honesty, and it's the sort of a process we're engaged in all the time because we're always learning together as well, and there are miscalculations and misrepresentations and misunderstandings that happen along the way when you're seeking understanding. That's a part of discovering something real. It's like separating the wheat from the chaff. There's an awful lot of chaff before you get to the good stuff. This was an opportunity for us to show you that we are a part of that process, a real part in our real life. This is actually happening. And I thought that would be valuable to show up that honestly in this way. And as a result of arriving at that place of self-honesty, and this happens often, there was a bit of a breakthrough in understanding. Oftentimes in our attempts to discover, our attempts to make something happen, we exhaust ourselves in the effort, and life kind of requires that we just stop, give up. And the moment we realize that our efforts are being misapplied, we get out of our own way, and then life happens. And almost as quickly as that, the thing we were working so hard to make happen just arrives. That's kind of what happened here to some extent. Here's the one thing I can say about the 41st angel now that I was not able to say before. Initially, we talked about this 41st pathway of anticipation as having a primarily intellectual bent. We referred to it as being this state, this point in a process where we feel mostly confused. We can sense that there's something coming, but we don't know what it is. And there's just kind of this intellectual scramble to remain connected to a process that ultimately reveals something eventually. I think that's totally misrepresented. And that's a part of why we're showing up again. Every one of these angel pathways is complete in and of itself. Our attempts to weave the pathway of anticipation into the linear process that we were describing earlier, I think that was a mistake. A well-intended one, but still a mistake. These aren't linear sequences. Every one of these angels is a complete subject. And so when we consider the pathway of anticipation as a complete and necessary part of every one of our individual processes, what we find is that there is nothing merely intellectual about it at all. In fact, what became clear to me is that the pathway of anticipation is directly connected to this seed of knowing we were talking about, the star seed at the center of you, this home base. The pathway of anticipation connects to that inner knowing, capital K knowing, and harnesses it. It is aware that something is coming. No, it does not get to know what it is, but ultimately the pathway of anticipation is about absolute assumption that what is coming will be good. That's why you don't need to know what it is. You just know it's going to be good. And so you anticipate the best. That's what the pathway of anticipation is about. And that's why here in the 63rd signature, we find the prime instinct to imagine. Because it's in our imagination that we are constantly assuming one thing or another. We're assuming that life is going to be difficult, or we're assuming that life is going to be fluid and elegant and delicious. We're assuming that there won't be enough money to pay the bills, or we're assuming that there will always be enough and more than enough. In any case, our inner assumptions produce the anticipatory experience that we encounter on this pathway of anticipation. The ideal anticipation, capital A anticipation, is an inner awareness that all is well, all will be well, everything grows, and you are totally supported. So that's what anticipation is. Anticipation is knowing, assuming good.
Mm-hmm.
That's altogether different than what we were describing before. And the way that connects to the pathway of passion is it permits passion. If you know that what is coming, will arrive, and it will be good, you've got everything you need to trust your own preferences, your own tendencies, your own leanings, and certainly your own passion. These two do work together, and they are almost linear or sequential in a way, but very different. It's very different from what we initially explained. You need to know that you are cared for in order to fully permit your passion, in order to fully engage your life. This is a theme we've been on now for days, that total engagement demands total trust. Mm-hmm. This pathway of anticipation is total trust.
Yeah.
It's absolute knowing that life is good. This is the foundation that allows for everything else, including the expression of your passion, your willingness to trust that your passion will lead you to something. That to me felt like a massive breakthrough, because we've been wanting to understand what's happening here for as long as we've been working with the angels. We found these words. We loved these words. We feel personally connected to them. We know that they're somehow woven into our own story of finding one another and all of this. And they've still remained somehow at a distance from us. But now we can see that our union is a literal proof of this pathway of anticipation. Laura felt this coming for a really long time. I felt this coming for a really long time, but we didn't know what it would look like or when it would happen. Each of us just knew somehow that this discovery of a perfect counterpart, of a divine counterpart, of a soulmate, of a, what did you call it, a twin flame?
Mm-hmm.
That this was possible, and that it was possible for us. And something about that awareness needed to be big enough and real enough and bright enough to continue to call us forward into more and more of life, more and more of those discoveries, more and more of those experiences, and ultimately the penny drop of meeting one another. That's just one example, and we're all going to live many more like it. But I hope that this addendum to our previous conversation helps to clarify what's happening in the pathway of anticipation, helps to really give this 41st angel the attention and the respect that it deserves. It is not less than the angel of truth. This pathway is not merely intellectual. In fact, it's barely intellectual. It's really a holistic event, as all the pathways are. And we hope that this helps to kind of clean any of the mistakes or misunderstanding that showed up in the previous recording. We use the word mistakes very lightly. There's a lot of grace around this. But in those cases where we become clear, we want to share the clarity. And if there is a case where we aren't clear but still misspoke from that lack of clarity, it's very important for all of us, I think, that we take the time to clarify, to be very explicit, and then to run with what we've found. So I hope this is helpful. Is there anything else you would add based on?
I don't think so.
Yeah? Okay. Then I think this is a good time to close part 2. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Goodbye again, and goodbye for real this time.
Bye.
Till soon.